this position will provide is the capacity to bring people together who historically don't have opportunities to get connected. Secretary Tennis was referring to a lot of these individual areas, and one of the challenges is getting these individual areas to work together and coordinate. He referenced something called a warm handoff, and I think that's a beautiful illustrative point about how you take something and you have someone who's presenting to an emergency department in the medical community, but who needs to go to get transitioned into recovery and into treatment for detox or potentially into long-term treatment. That handoff between those two groups has always been a struggle, and from a patient's perspective, they weren't really sure what to do with it. It took a lot of family support and a lot of other resources to make that happen. Having an individual to help meet them where they are, warm handoff, and then help them transition over to that group allows communication between two groups that historically have struggled with that kind of handoff. I liken it to silos and having a communication between two silos.
Let's make it a little simpler. Let's take a guy who just OD'd. They just pumped him full of naloxone. How's this new entity going to make a difference?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's a personal choice about whether someone seeks to go into recovery at that point. So some folks who overdose, who get naloxone, say, actually, I'm not ready for recovery. At this point, I'm still in my addiction, and that's my priority. The hope would be for those individuals who recognize the seriousness of that situation and ask for help, we're going to be able to get them help that much more efficiently and effectively.
And why is that important?
Why is that important? There's a time element to it. Individuals who are open to recovery and going into getting treatment are usually open for relatively brief windows of time. And if we miss that window of time, they're going to go back to their addiction. It's going to be that much harder.
So what would be your first priorities when you kind of take on this new role? What are the things you're kind of targeting where you say, you know, there wasn't someone in this role full time in the past, now that there is, I'll be able to do and work on these things specifically?
There's about 2 or 3 areas that are really important to us. So when we talk about this, we want to make decisions and do your work based on data. And so we're going to be working with folks who are already in this field, folks from the county level, folks in the treatment community, to understand what the true demand is, understand what the true process is at present, and then from that be able to formulate, based on data, we're going to be able to answer the questions about where the next steps are. We're really going to be focusing on those spaces between organizations that are already in place and making sure those communications are going well. You need to be very deliberate about that. They don't just naturally or organically happen. They typically will follow funding streams, which is natural. This is something that's going to be hopefully forcing together some funding streams to be even more effective.
So what would the takeaway that you want people to walk away with be? You know, people that hear this, hear, you know, new full-time position, what's the takeaway you want people to hear?
I mean, the takeaway would be, I think, it's kind of the heroin task force is the microcosm of it. I would use that as an illustrative point. The heroin task force is a group that is not one group. It's many groups coming together on a common issue. This executive director position is very, very similar to that. Its goal is going to be taking different groups who historically don't navigate and engage with each other effectively, not through lack of good intent, but just through busyness and other demands, and hopefully directing that connection and deliberate collaboration between them so they can be more effective in what they do.
So the resources may be there in the county, they just aren't necessarily, the bridges aren't there, if you will.
So the first thing I said was about data. So I'm assuming the resources are there. I think what we'll find is we have some resources that are there and some resources that aren't there. But the only way to be able to effectively communicate what those needs are is to gather that data and then be able to reflect that back to the folks who make those decisions and say, gosh, we need more of this, or actually we really just need connections between these entities and coordinated efforts between these groups. You know, Bev Macrath came in and worked with children and youth